All right, so here we go, everyone. Did you watch? Did you watch? What did you think? Welcome to the Don Lemon Show. Good evening. We're so glad that you could be here with us this evening. You just watched it live. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz facing off in the first and only vice presidential debate. So much to discuss. What went on? Who won? What did you think? I'm grateful to have a phenomenal panel to help me break it all down for you. First up, Abe Gurko is a best-selling author. And he is joining us here. He is a humorist. He is the man behind the Substack column, Won't Be Silent, Ana Marie Cox, a show, I don't know, a friend to the show, as well as Abe, a veteran political columnist and the host of the podcast 90 Days with Ana Marie Cox. Also, Brian Shapiro is a longtime political commentator, and he is the host of the radio show Pushing the Limits. He's new to the show, but he is a new pal of mine, and I'm so happy that he is here. I think he's going to bring the heat. I hope he doesn't yell at us like he yells at his callers who call in, at least the MAGA folks. Whitney Tilson is joining me here in studio. I'm calling him my co-pilot. He is with me in studio, and he is Whitney. He is a longtime Democratic donor and philanthropist and the editor of the Stansberry Research. So hello and welcome to all of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So let's get to it. I want to know from you, Abe, what you thought of the debate, of the performance. Here's what I'll just tell you just initially, and then I'll give my assessment. I thought like they were normal people. They were being cordial. No one talked about eating dogs or cats. So whether you liked what they had to say or not, at least they were acting like normal human beings. No? Yes?
No, it was very civil. And I appreciate that based on the debate with Kamala and Donald Trump. However, I can't get away from looking at J.D. Vance like he is like an AI come to life. Like we know he's a liar on the campaign trail, and when he's being interviewed, he's like a liar. So just looking at him with the children of the corn eyes, it makes it really hard to think that he's actually being, honest and organic. But he pulled off a good act, as with someone that AI comes to life, and there he is. So that's my opinion.
Ana Marie Cox, listen, J.D. Vance is media trained. Tim Walz has said before he's not good at debating. I think that, I said I was going to tell you the rest. I think that Tim Walz comes off as a human being and sort of a normal American. J.D. Vance comes off as slick and polished, and I think he actually did a good job there because of his media training, because he does so much cable news and he's on the Sunday shows and what have you. We'll get into the details about who lied and who didn't and what have you. But I thought his performance,
Sure. It turns out that being on a lot of Nazi podcasts trains you well for doing a national television debate. Who knew? Y'all, if you're training for a debate, just go be on some extreme right-wing podcast where you talk about the best use for a post-menopausal woman. Yeah. Tim Walz hasn't done a lot of those podcasts, so I guess that's why he was a little rustier. My former governor, I live in Texas now, but I did get to cast a vote for Tim Walz. He's definitely the person that I remember. Not trained to the camera, like a lot of folks, like a lot of people who have been elevated to this level. I think it's interesting that the Times published, before the debate was finished, put up an article about how Vance's debate, like the debate shows why Trump picked him, which I guess is true, but I think it also, I haven't seen any other coverage. This is the first media coverage that I've seen. But I'm guessing that there's going to be a lot of people saying that Vance won or looked better or made a better presentation. But I think if we look at this debate as one over, like, how would it actually look if you talked about politics with someone that you respected a little bit? And I personally don't have a lot of respect for Vance, but I appreciate that Walz acted like he had respect for Vance. This is how that conversation might go. Walz acted like a person having a conversation or trying to make their point, who cared about the politics and had the facts, at hand. Sometimes he struggled a little bit, I think, to keep things totally straight, but I think that's what like a normal human would do.
You think relatable? You're saying?
Yeah.
as someone who is, as a woman, and you've heard someone who
I am
says
a woman. It's
such
true.
disparaging things about women, you know, the single and childless cat ladies, and why is someone, a woman over 50, why does she care about reproductive rights? Did he win over anything for you?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that was okay. To be fair, that was a tall ask. Like, I don't think he was going to. And you know, he's running with like a sex pest at the top of the ticket, so like it's gonna be a reach. I am a cat lady, by the way. Like, I guess you can't see my cat picture.
I'm a childless dog man.
I'm
So,
a childless cat and dog lady. I am bisexual. I think we have talked about it. I think actually one of the most offensive parts of the debate to me, most offensive things that Vance did, is he told an anecdote that started with talking about a friend of his who'd had an abortion and how she felt that it was what she had to do. I'm going to paraphrase this because I did get really angry, so the words themselves are not in my head. She was grateful that she had been able to because she didn't know how she would have survived otherwise because she was in an abusive relationship. And he started that answer. I was like, oh my God, he's going to do it. Like he's going to actually do something that might win over some women. And then he said, and so really what the Republican Party has to do is win over their trust. That in a nutshell, like I got really mad about that. I'll try to narrow down why it is. What that is doing is saying instead of trust women, which is what the Democratic Party says, is saying the job is for women to trust us. That turns it entirely on its head. I hope people here understand like how wild and mansplaining and gaslighting that is. Like, no, don't, it's not we need to provide women what they need. It is we need to change women's minds about what they think they need. That's psychotic.
Brian Shapiro, I just had a friend who is a Trump supporter, and he said, that was a beatdown. Let me know the spin the other way. Do you agree, Brian Shapiro, that it was a beatdown? I can't hear Brian. Is he muted? Brian, are you muted?
There we go.
There we go. Yes, now I can hear you.
John, thanks for having me on. First of all,
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it. Yeah, I think that's idiotic with all due respect. First of all, J.D. Vance wouldn't even admit that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. How could we respect anybody? When asked about gun control, Don, he said we need to make our windows and our doors stronger in our schools. That is, I mean, he wouldn't answer a bunch of questions. I mean, going through my list here, he dodged question after question. Donald Trump said that he didn't believe in climate change, that it was a hoax. When J.D. Vance was asked about that, he wouldn't even directly answer the question. He was asked, will you separate families with deportation? He wouldn't directly answer that question either. This is exactly done the way I thought this debate was going to go down. Tim Walz, normal guy, decent man, maybe sometimes a little bit too nice, but I thought he did a pretty decent job. And J.D. Vance put forth the red meat that right-wingers and MAGA supporters want to hear. So it doesn't surprise me that somebody that you know that's a MAGA supporter would say J.D. Vance won the debate. There are still MAGA supporters out there that say Donald Trump won the debate against Kamala Harris. So with all due respect, I don't really respect that opinion of whoever that is. I'm sure he's a nice guy if he's your friend. But when J.D. Vance won't even answer again the basic question, who won the 2020 election? How can you respect that?
Hey, Brian, if you get a little bit closer to the computer, I would appreciate it. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to talk to Whitney, who's here, who's my co-pilot in the studio here. Should we call it, what, Studio 54? I don't know. We can call it whatever. In the Don Lemon studio. Let me just read something. This is someone that says this is, you don't like my music. And I read the comments, and I bounce off the folks who are in our comments and our subscribers. You don't like my music, says Vance won, and I hate J.D. Vance. Do you agree with that? We were talking about the odds before we went on.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, interestingly, this debate was exactly what this race is, which is a toss-up. I think partisans on either side are going to say it was a beatdown in one direction or the other, but what I saw was sort of they fought to a draw.
Can you give us a two-shot on this camera, please? And, yeah, go ahead.
Most importantly, both of them did the most important thing they needed to do is not harm their running mates. Because ultimately, these two people don't really matter. This is about Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump and who wins the election in, 38 days, something like that. And both of them avoided any major errors that would harm their running mates. And so interestingly enough, I checked the real money betting sites and all real time. And right now, there's a bet on what the polls say tomorrow on who won the debate. And right now that's a toss-up. And basically right now, the election on November 5th is a toss-up as well. And I think that's probably right.
He did it. You and I were watching in the beginning. And Tim Walz started off a bit nervous, which is interesting because so did the vice president. But as I was watching it, I said to you, I said, you know what, he'll warm up, and he did eventually warm up.
Yeah.
So that helped. What?
Yeah, but J.D. Vance was good. I mean, Walz improved and was solid, but J.D. Vance, I had lower expectations for him, and so he may have exceeded expectations more than I expected. Because look, he's had a bunch of moments where he was very weird, stilted, unlikable out there, you know, ordering donuts at a donut shop, that kind of thing. And a lot of those old videos have been coming out where he was saying some really offensive things. And so I was sort of hoping, you know, he'd make a major mistake, and he didn't.
Yeah. Here's what, do you remember, Ana, we were on yesterday, and I said to you, I said, listen, like him or not, J.D. Vance is out there doing the work when Donald Trump is on the golf course. You remember? I said, I'm not sure who I said that to. I think I said it to you. He's on the golf course, and J.D. Vance is doing all the things that Donald Trump doesn't want to do. He's on cable news. He's on broadcast news. He's at the diners. He's doing the, you know, he's at the, you know, at the meet and greets, right? And he's doing all of these events, and that's perhaps so the best training for you if you're going to go up, if you're going to do something like a debate. So that makes him slick and polished, but does that make him a winner? Does that make him relatable? Does that change minds among the American people?
I mean, look, let's just be real frank. I think I'm sure everyone here knows that vice presidential debates do not move the needle very much at all in general. Like, it just, in debates in general. Also, the only way that this is going to have a huge impact is if someone really fucked up, right? Like,
and I want to ask if there, because there was one thing I thought was a really.
I didn't detect. I'd be curious to know that. But the other thing I was going to say is, number one, again, I think it's the Nazi podcast that probably really helped him. Number two, he did go to law school. Let's not, you know, that's probably part of the reason why he was really polished up there in front of a podium and everything. And then also, this is the difference between someone who trained as a lawyer and someone who trained as a teacher.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, a guy up there behind that podium is used to getting kids to get excited about answering questions about history and not giving pat, you know, stump speeches or delivering even clearer lines. Like, he got some good lines in there. Who's going to honor democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump? That was a good line. And that's, like, to me, the line of the night. To me.
My line of the night, Mike, can I just jump in?
Yeah.
My favorite line.
And by the way, any of you can jump in at any time if you're passionate about something. Please jump in. I know, Brian, you know, we have to like push you to do it because you're not really passionate and you're a little bit shy. So please feel free to jump in, everybody. Go ahead, Abe.
I'm neither of those, but the best line that Walz gave was, "We're not pro-abortion, we're pro-women," and that to me was like.
Also good.
Which is the essence of this race, I believe.
I agree.
It's going to be, if she wins or loses, it's going to be women showing up in numbers that will outlast what we did in 2020.
I guess for me, it's.
Can we put Whitney up, please, as well?
The moderate Republicans and the independents, that's who you're trying to win over, right? That's what really matters. And the question that I'm asking myself, and I would ask all of you, is did Tim Walz or J.D. Vance win any moderates out there, any independents? I'm not sure. I don't think anybody really won this debate. And listen, I am very anti-J.D. Vance. I'll be the first one to say that. But I can't sit here and say that Tim Walz destroyed him or won the debate. I don't, like some of you have already said, I don't think this moves the needle at all. If you were going to vote for Donald Trump before this debate, you're still going to vote for Donald Trump. And if you were going to vote for Kamala Harris, you're still voting for her. This is exactly what I expected. J.D. Vance is going to throw out the right-wing red meat. How many times did he call Kamala Harris the border czar? I mean, we knew this was going to happen. I wish Tim Walz went after him a little bit more on the questions that he refused to answer. But again, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but did they win over any moderates? I'm not so sure either of them.
Well, let me just say this, Brian. I don't disagree with you. I kept saying, Tim Walz, step in. But he kept saying, you know, Kamala Harris did this, or she allowed all of these people to get in, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, Tim, could you jump in? And
I am so in agreement with you on that. Jumping at the seams. I was upset. I like Tim Walz. He's a good guy. You cannot let J.D. Vance go up there and say that, well, we need to harden our schools and let's make those windows and doors stronger. I mean, when he won't answer a very basic question of who won the election, I just think there were so many moments in this debate where J.D. and Springfield, Ohio, I don't think he hit that home enough. Let me give you an example. In this debate, J.D. Vance constantly talked about kids and the health and safety of our kids. Well, if that's the case, then why do you continue to lie about what happened in Springfield, Ohio? There are kids that got bomb threats in schools. If I'm Tim Walz, I would have said, if you care about kids, then why do you continue to lie about legal migrants in Springfield, Ohio? There were moments where I just wish he was a little stronger. Yeah, I guess that's one word to put it.
Isn't that Minnesota nice coming to?
I was going to say, I think everyone needs to take into account that he is from Minnesota, and that in a way, it's a wonder that he was critical at all. Like, I lived in Minnesota for 10 years. The other thing that I was expecting is that he was going to still be standing. They should check if he's still standing on the stage, because Minnesota takes like 5 hours to leave a party. You know, like, you gotta be going. Oh well, you know. And then,
but Anna, how does that play in Peoria? Like, it's great because if you're out there and it's important that you're great at retail politics.
Well,
but it's also important that you perform when you're on a national or international stage where this is the biggest audience that Tim Walz and J.D. Vance will have before people go into the voting booth.
I mean, we elected Trump. America elected Trump. I didn't have anything to do with that, but he did win. And then George W. Bush was president for 8 years. Like, not exactly a polished guy. I think our definition of what America wants kind of changes by who America actually elects. Like that, then the pundits are like, oh, so that's what they want. And then we try to fit that into everything else. I mean, again, nothing's going to move the needle here. I think the most interesting thing for us to talk about, and not that this all hasn't been fascinating, but I do want to point out that the second question at this debate was a climate change question. That, I think, is a record in terms of like how prominently climate change has been featured in any kind of presidential debate that I remember. And I am sad that it was at the vice presidential debate, which is probably going to be the least paid attention to of any of these things. But I thought it was really good that they asked it. I thought it was one of the times when J.D. Vance just lied, and one of the times that actually that's when Walz, I felt like, kind of started to kick into gear a bit. I thought he was always at his best when he was doing kind of a stage version of retail politics, telling stories about constituents and telling stories about policies and how policies come to affect individual people. And so when he was talking about the topsoil getting washed away in Minneapolis or in Minnesota, and he was talking about the farmers he knew who's having to go through floods one year and droughts the next, I think that's the kind of politician that a lot of people want to hear from. It isn't slick and polished. And it is, like I said, sort of a staged version of retail, which we can't agree that
we're going to see what the polls and what the folks have to say again. And listen, I know, look, my subscribers know me. There are thousands and thousands of people who are watching, and they're like, hey, there's not enough thumbs up and not enough likes. So like and subscribe, and make sure you hit the thumbs up, because the folks in the comments will get you. Whitney, you've been sitting here very patiently, and you're shaking your head, and you're listening to everybody. What do you think?
My initial reaction was similar to Brian's, where Walz should have had, I felt like, some attack dog lines, some tight scripted lines on abortion, repeating, what J.D. Vance, called Trump Hitler once, right? Like, he could have repeated that and said, I used to agree with the old J.D. Vance. On the other hand, Kamala Harris, I think, picked him and not Shapiro, for example, because he's Minnesota nice, because he's relatable to those average folks out in middle America that are going to determine this election.
But both of us said at the same time, like, you know what? Josh Shapiro would have been eating J.D. Vance's lunch on the stage, but you're not exactly sure that's what the American people want.
Yeah, I have to say, I feel like.
Can we let Whitney finish?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure.
Go ahead, Abe.
Go ahead, Abe.
I disagree. I think JD just being so almost robotic. I think there will be people that will reject that kind of slick, polished, because you see him lying leading up to this evening. Like the way the mistakes he's made, the kind of rhetoric he's used, the fact that he's going on Nazi podcasts, I think is why I think Walz actually had the advantage, because There's just something about this election cycle for me personally that I want to see like a mensch in the White House. And I think that's what Kamala is versus Trump. I think that WALZ is versus J.D. Vance. Just, I want human. I don't want these robotic.
Hey, Abe,
yes.
can I ask you something? I
Sure.
understand what you're saying. If you're watching with the sound down, what are you thinking? Because I had friends who they're in love with Tim Walz and they're in love with Kamala Harris. And they said, who advised Tim Walz to spend the bulk of the debate in profile? So if you're watching, can we just talk about the training and the preparation? What?
I think
Why are
Tim
you guys
Walz was
laughing?
Tim Walz was clearly badly trained.
It's funny.
Sure. I mean, I agree. I'm going to go back to. I don't think people talk about watching it with the sound down. No one's watching it. Like no one's watching it at all, or like few people. And then people who did watch it were just are not going to have their minds changed by it. I mean, I think if I'm going to pick on Tim Walz, I thought his like dead-eyed stare into the camera was like.
But no, we're not picking on. This is just analysis.
Well, you're saying okay, all right.
I think for all his clumsiness, I feel like that was like endearing in a way.
Brian, you're holding your tongue, but I'm just saying, go on.
I mean, I don't know. The sound was up for me, but yeah, I can't speak to that. But I want to say this: you guys had mentioned when he had called Donald Trump possibly the next American Adolf Hitler, and he was asked about that, and he said something very interesting. He said, "When you misspeak, you have to admit you're wrong." Can we all admit that's not misspeak? Okay, call somebody the next Adolf Hitler, a guy who's responsible for killing over 7 million Jews. That's not misspeaking. Okay, Tim Walz is the guy that misspoke. He's misspoken a couple times, and right-wing MAGAs have been going after him nonstop. When you call somebody the next American Adolf Hitler, that's not misspeaking. That's how he still feels, I believe.
Yeah.
So how do you guys feel about that answer? So that's going to say, because there are people who, a lot of folks are saying, I don't care. It was in the 80s, right? Decades ago. And then others are like, that was a cringe answer. He could have been better about that answer.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, it wasn't a good answer because I don't think he prepared for it because it's so completely irrelevant. I actually had to Google it to figure out what is this question even about. And just very briefly, he took students to China on at least 15 occasions. And he has said that he was in Hong Kong on one of those trips when Tiananmen Square happened, which was April 1989. So this is 35 years ago. And he misremembered. It turns out he wasn't in Hong Kong. He was back home in the United States on that day. And he acknowledged, I misremembered. I mean, so what? That he just didn't remember where he was 35 years ago? So it was interesting. They asked the two gotcha questions back to back. They sort of got Walz uncomfortable on that, then immediately followed with the question, J.D. Vance, you've called your running mate like Hitler, and Vance actually. It's a much more damning thing that they were nailing Vance for. You called your running mate, a danger to our country, and called him Hitler, et cetera, et cetera.
One of the worst tyrants.
Right, exactly.
In the world's
On the other
history.
hand, Vance knew that question was coming and sort of had a dodge or whatever. Like, I think he handled a much, much more damning question probably about as well as you could, given that there really is no good answer for why you flip-flopped other than you're politically craving.
Mm-hmm.
I think the women were amazing. I thought they were great, which changes the subject, but I definitely think that of all the debates that we've seen for a while, the women handled it great, I thought.
Well, I just want to know, though, what did you guys think of that? Do you agree with Whitney? Do you think that it's a thing or it's a nothing burger, his answer on the whole Tiananmen Square thing and his answer in the debate? Is it going to affect this election at all? Will people say, he lied about that, or is it going to? Therefore, let me tell you what Republicans and MAGA folks are going to do. Well, he lied on this, and you called Donald Trump a liar. Well, J.D. Vance is a liar. He's saying that he was someplace where he wasn't, and not considering the 9,994 lies that Donald Trump told in the last.
Keep
30
in mind,
days.
More broadly, what they've been trying to do is not that particular being misstating where he was on that day. But more broadly, they're saying you went to China so many times, like that you're a China sympathizer, and Donald Trump said get tough on China.
You're beholden to China.
Yeah, which is a completely separate but related point. But I don't think either of those carries much water. He was a school teacher taking students on trips to China.
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, I think that he's misspoke a couple times, and right-wing MAGA Republicans out there have been attacking him every single day since Kamala Harris announced that he would be her VP running mate. I think it's important to note here there are so many more things in this debate where J.D. Vance blamed the Biden-Harris administration. He blamed the Harris administration for the Hamas attack. He actually blamed Kamala Harris for Hamas butchering and killing over 1,300 innocent people in Israel. He blamed her for everything that's going on at the border, blamed her for inflation, for everything. I think that's important to note. Over and over and over again, if they were fact-checking, which I think moderators should fact-check in a debate, that's just my personal opinion. J.D. Vance, in my opinion, could have been fact-checked on almost every single answer.
Yeah, he was lying, which is what he is. This is why he was very AI. He was very deadpan. He's got the eyes that just kind of are. It's almost like I don't even think he blinked. I just think that he's like a Stepford wife that just has decided that this is what I'm going to do now. Which just I have to throw this in. I've said it for months. Whoever was going to be the choice for vice president from Trump was going to be someone that the Heritage Foundation is happy with, because I truly believe they want to use Trump to get in the White House, and then soon after it'll be he'll somehow be unalived, and then that is our president. And that's the scariest part of J.D. Vance. He's a liar. I don't think he delivered any real bangs today against Kamala, really, because he was just like, it was a robot. I think he didn't do any favors for the Republicans, personally.
Okay, let me go ahead, Anna. My next question is to you, but you want to follow up on that?
I was going to say, I agree that this is all part of like a larger, paleo-conservative project in terms of what Vance is there for. Like, that's what Project 25 is. I don't know about the unaliving early part, but definitely it's a play to get the youngest, vice presidential candidate in decades, and ever, I think, in there to be president in at least 4 years, right? The other thing I wanted to point out in terms of just, I think it says something. It's how their tactics say something about their campaigns, which is that J.D. Vance really wanted to tangle with Tim Walz. Like, he wanted to talk about Tim Walz's positions and talk about needle him on his particular like foibles or missteps or whatever. And Walz was really focused on hyping Harris and attacking Trump. People wanted him to go after JD more, but I don't know if y'all noticed, he tended to keep his attacks at the top of the ticket, which is really disciplined, actually. And I think probably the smartest thing to do for whoever is listening, because they're not voting on Vance versus Walz, right? They're voting up the top of the ticket. And I think that actually shows something about the character of the men, too. I think Walz is perfectly happy to do things that support the whole ticket. And I think his willingness, this is the thing I said before, his willingness to be supportive of a woman at the top of the ticket and to not take center stage is one of the things that makes him threatening to the right. They can't get their head around that.
So I think that, Walz, that, he was extraordinarily lucky because he had that answer that not many people liked, right? And I'm not sure if it's going to matter on Tiananmen Square, but right after that, I think his strongest issue came up, and that was abortion. And I think that's where he was at his strongest on that issue. It allowed him, Brian, to regain some momentum.
Absolutely agree. If you recall, in the last debate, Donald Trump was asked if there's an abortion ban put on your desk, will you veto it? Donald Trump would not answer that question. Same thing with J.D. Vance. And I thought one of the strongest moments was when Tim Walz talked about this, and he said, geography shouldn't have a bearing on a woman's body, right? That's more, Guys, that's what we're talking about here. What does it matter what state you live in? If a woman wants to have an abortion, she should have to drive 600 miles. I was so happy when Tim Walz brought that up. But again, J.D. Vance wasn't specific on this. He wants people to trust Republicans. He wants women to trust Republicans when this ticket won't even answer a very basic question, at least Donald Trump won't. And if you recall, on this issue, it was Donald Trump that threw J.D. Vance under the bus and said, well, I haven't talked to him about this issue. So, I mean, listen, I think women, I've talked to many women, many Republicans out there. This is the #2 issue on most Americans' minds. And I think Tim Walz won this issue hands down. And I thought it was probably the most important part of the debate, at least for Tim Walz. And I thought he hit that one out of the park.
Anna, do you think he won over any sort of independent, or you know how I feel about undecideds, but we'll just go with it. I think undecideds are.
I don't think there's such a thing, right?
I don't believe there's such a thing. I think undecideds are just looking for an excuse to vote for Donald Trump, right? Give him something. But do you think he won over anyone, at least Tim Walz, with this? And also, we'll talk about that later, but he has to sort of win over the bros. That's what they want. But go ahead, Anna. Well, if you can get enough women voting for you the way the turnout has been historically, you don't need as many of the. I mean, like right now, if Kamala can turn out, white women to vote for her, that's enough. That'll do it, and that's what they're kind of counting on. I mean, I think that Tim Walz made the case that they've always the party has been making. For a while, and most strongly in this past, since Kamala got to the top of the ticket, which is this is not about abortion. This is about women.
Right.
This is about trusting women, and that's again why Vance's answer to the abortion question just infuriated me so much.
But time and time again, J.D. Vance was making Kamala out to be like the boogeyman, and I think that's really offensive. I was offended every time he would use her name in a way that would sort of just kind of, it was in its own little kind of aggressive, not, passive aggressive, the way he would even say her name. I was very offended by that. And he did it a few times that made me write, he's making her the boogeyman. And that I think is subtle and weird.
Can I just add one more quick thing to what you just said? I agree with you. How many times in this debate did he make it seem like Kamala Harris has been the president of the United States for the last 3.5 years? Do Americans understand that she can't pass all these bills and do the same types of things that Joe Biden can do? But yet he made it out to be that, she was the president of the United States the last 3.5 years. She's the vice president. There is a big difference.
Which is surprising that he didn't say that, because that, to me, was the only real mistake he made on a couple of occasions.
Wait, go on. Explain. What do you mean by that?
I think, you guys have been saying, well, WALZ is whatever. That, to me, the one mistake he made, where he didn't say, well, she wasn't the president, JD,
right.
And that's, boom.
Yeah, how many bills did Mike Pence pass? Funny,
Say again, Brian?
Mike Pence, did Mike Pence do anything besides almost get hung? The whole 4 years? No.
It would be hanged. Abe would be hanged.
Right. Well, I guess. I always thought he was like, whatever.
I think both hung and hanged are acceptable, actually. But what I was gonna say is the thing I wanted. So we all have our like the fan scenarios that we wanted, like the fan fiction we want to do for this. I wanted WALZ to say something to Vance about, why do you think you have this job? What happened to your predecessor? Like, why do you think this job? What made this a job opening for you? Like, why was the position vacant? Do you want to explain what happened that the last guy in this position is no longer there? Because then you have to talk about the fact that they sort of got to this. I just wish you'd been a little more direct. I have other things I wanted to happen, but
can I jump
his
in?
reaction to that? I noticed, and JD's reaction was like that.
Yeah.
Child of the corn.
Go ahead.
Just a quick thought. Big picture here. The role of these two people, first and foremost, is to deliver a few incremental voters that the top of the ticket might not get. And I've always been puzzled from the day he picked him. what incremental voter does J.D. Vance bring to Trump? And this debate didn't answer that question. I can't think of a single person. Whereas Harris has always had a problem as a black Asian woman who's a lawyer from San Francisco. There's an otherness that some combination or all five of those things brings to voters in Middle America who will decide this election. And Tim Walz is someone who does not hit any of those five buttons. In other words, he adds diversity to the ticket in the sense that he isn't any of those other things, and so he complements Harris well. And what we saw in the debate tonight was a relatable guy who I think will appeal and will draw some incremental voters, maybe just enough voters to carry the few key states that will decide this election.
I don't know how you guys feel about this. When he called himself Knucklehead, I laughed because I thought it was a good human type moment. You would never hear J.D. Vance or Donald Trump called himself a name like that. Tim Walz is a normal guy. I thought that was a funny, normal moment of humility, and I think most Americans that are normal people can relate to that. I thought that was a good thing when he said that about himself.
Well, let's listen. I want to hear because we said his strongest, the strongest point that he had tonight, it was on abortion. Let's listen to it, and then we'll continue to discuss. Here it is.
President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about health care. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in health care for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you?
Okay, well, let's pause it there, because I think, again, that was the strongest answer of the evening. Do you think that resonates, Whitney?
I don't know. Let me defer to the other panelists on that. I thought. I mean, this is the issue that may carry Harris to victory, and so he knew it was coming, and I just felt like it could have been a little stronger. So it was a good answer, but I'd give it a B+, and I wanted an A+.
I don't know. So a couple things. One, I thought the story that he told was good. There are unfortunately thousands of more stories you could probably tell, right, that we don't know. Here in Texas, he said it skyrocketed. I'm going to get emotional. Actually, maternal mortality in Texas went up 56%. 56%. And the other thing I want to say is, if you're going to, I talked about what J.D. Vance said at that question, and he talked about that friend of his who had gotten an abortion because she was in an abusive relationship and she was grateful to have gotten it. And he talked about his answer was kind of like, we really need to change women's minds. Do you know what the number one cause of deaths of pregnant women is in America? The number one cause? It's homicide. Because women are beaten, because they can't get out of those relationships. Like, abortion saves lives in a lot of ways. And one of the ways it saves lives is to allow women to be able to get out of those kinds of relationships.
I mean, I thought the fact that he had a friend that went through that, and the way he talks about women in general on the campaign trail, is he lied about anything he said at that moment was a lie. He doesn't want him and Trump come together and get women. They don't want women to trust them at all. And you can't, that was a performance that I thought ultimately was robotically a failure, because he did not win anybody outside of the yuckleheads that they're already voting for them.
I agree, Abe. I'm a little surprised that the childless cat lady didn't come up. The fact that this guy has attacked everyone in this country that don't have kids. I'm a little surprised that he didn't bring that up. But when in talking about abortion, when Tim Walz said, we need to trust the women in this country and doctors, I thought that was a great moment as well. And again, going back to what he said, we shouldn't, women shouldn't have to worry about geography and what state they're in. I thought that was a really important point as well. And I agree. I think that was probably the most important part of the debate for Tim Walz. And I thought he did a good job. Could he have been a little stronger on it? Perhaps, but I thought he certainly won over a lot of women.
Another interesting point during the debate for me, and I knew it was going to come up, is I wanted to hear how J.D. Vance would respond to the 2020 election and whether it was stolen and whether he was going to continue or double down on election denial. Here it is, and then we'll discuss.
This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020
Great answer.
situation?
Great answer.
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not.
I don't think I'd taken in Tim Walz's double take there. Okay, I take everything back about how he wasn't well prepped. That is an example of how a good not being well prepped. Like, that spontaneous, double take was amazing.
He's talking to an audience of one. He knows that if he says that Trump lost the 2020 election, his boss will have a heart attack. Okay? J.D. Vance knows, like so many other Republicans that are in office, that Trump lost the 2020 election. Of course, we don't need to litigate that. There's no evidence of widespread voter fraud that could have changed the outcome of the election. The only reason why J.D. Vance won't answer that question is because of Donald Trump. He looks like he has no backbone. He is a coward. And the fact that he was unable to even answer the question, I mean, it's almost like I'd rather him just lie and say Trump won. He'd be a liar, but at least he answered the question. He wouldn't even answer the question. It shows you what a coward J.D. Vance is.
What do you say? Did Kamala Harris censor Americans? Abe, what the F was that?
I just want to say, the more we're talking, the more I feel like Tim Walz really took the night. When you kind of just take a breath and you get off the fact that the Marlboro Man looking thing was just sitting there lying a lot. And Tim's answers were just substantial, they were substantive. And I definitely find this, I'll say this. Tim Walz had me at hello when he talked about, forgiving everyone for not watching Dancing with the Stars. We're going to get
to that. I want to get to that. But can we talk about him, honestly, not being able to say that an election that's been adjudicated, the legitimacy of an election that has been adjudicated in 60 courts, including the Supreme Court. Am I wrong about that?
Did it go to the Supreme Court, or did they just reject the appeals?
It went to the highest courts of the land.
Every
and
court
60
ruled
of them,
against
okay?
them.
So let's just be straight about this. And J.D. Vance can stand on a stage in front of all Americans and whoever's watching internationally and say that, and can't say that the election was legitimate, that it was not stolen. That is not being a patriot.
Right.
that is not abiding by the U.S. Constitution.
Right.
That is un-American.
And WALZ should have had a line there that said something like, it is what is more fundamental to America and our democracy than accepting the will of the voters. And the fact that Donald Trump to this day will not accept that he lost the last election is completely disqualifying. You know, some sort of
It is
line
completely
like that.
disqualifying. And not only did he lose the election, but he refused to what?
Well,
Abide by the peaceful and willing transfer of power from one president to another, and would not even show up to the inauguration
but even
of a
before
president
that,
who was elected legitimately.
He could have had a really good line in there saying, like, he instigated a mob to try and overturn the election and try and have his own vice president hung. So he could have turned to JD and said, so JD, I'd watch your back with this guy.
And
You know,
then
something like that. It would have brought the House down.
he blamed Democrats, and then he said Hillary. He tried to compare January 6th and blamed Democrats for attacks on our democracy. Hillary Clinton conceded. What is he talking about? And he said Democrats have done the same thing. I don't recall Democrats ever inciting, an insurrection that took place. And, it's so interesting because then, if you recall, J.D. Vance said, if we lose, I'll shake your hand and I'll admit it that we lost. Well, your boss won't. That's what I would have said. Okay, I'm glad you will, but your boss won't.
Wait, Brian, wait a minute. You don't remember the phone call for Hillary Clinton calling Wisconsin and saying, give me the 11,780 votes. That's all I need.
And it was Michigan.
Pennsylvania, anywhere, somewhere in there.
I don't remember that phone call at all.
The blue wall fell apart.
Politics do this all the time. They want to say, well, what aboutism? The Democrats did that. No, they didn't. Hillary Clinton conceded. And when she called Donald Trump an illegitimate president, it wasn't because of the election. It's because of his behavior, the things he said. She's on record saying that. So it's a false equivalency. In fact, this guy wouldn't answer the question at all, speaks to who he is, just like the Kevin McCarthy's and all these other Republicans that don't have backbones that kiss the ring of Donald Trump.
Can I say something that's going to be, may not be popular, but I think that this whole argument for us Democrats is we get incensed about it. I don't think between the January 6th committee and the amount of time we have spent on this conversation, I don't think that's the deciding factor for Kamala versus Trump again. Again, I think the thing about the women voting for, we're about women, not about, we're pro-women, we're not pro-abortion. Those are the things that are going to really hit home. We can't relitigate that same January 6th thing over and over again. We know how horrendous those people are and how Trump is. And for J.D. Vance to stand there like a lying AI Stepford wife, child of the corn, kind of just lying to America about what happened on January 6th and thereafter, ignoring the courts. I mean, it's like talking to a brick wall is not gonna,
But here's the thing, Abe, as someone who works in media and knows the power of video and sound, is that when someone says that, all you have to do is say, roll the tape of January 20th. And you will see police officers being beaten
January 6th,
excuse me. You will see police officers being beaten with flagpoles. And when they say there were no weapons, and then my friend Michael Fanone, who was a police officer there, will tell you, yes, and if you read the actual reports, there were weapons found among the people on January 6th. And so you can roll the tape. There's actual evidence of it. And so you can say to them, this isn't about your feelings. This isn't about some nebulous paper or something, a statement that you put up on the screen. This is actually videotape of the crowd who said that they back the blue and support police officers, and there they are trying to kill them with flagpoles and weapons that they had hidden in their pockets. And not only that, taking a dump, and I'm saying they did, defecating on the U.S. Capitol. There's actual evidence to show it. And that's why I say you have to continue to talk about January 6th. Yes. You have to show the video and you have to put the evidence in their face. And then there is a phone call that says, all I need is 11,780 votes. So that's why I say you have to continue. How can you stand on a stage and say, well, you know, what about did Kamala Harris not censor? It makes him look like an idiot, which is what he is. So,
He is, but Don, it's even worse. I just wanted to state that Donald Trump called those people that you described accurately hostages and patriots. Vivek Ramaswamy still says that January 6th was an inside job. These people are
and he's promised to pardon them all if
Yes,
he gets
the
elected.
it's the pardoning. It's the pardoning that is the bigger, you know.
it is, but you have to
Really?
show them what it is first and talk about it. So then you can go, well, you're pardoning someone for this? You're pardoning someone who you guys saw the police officer screaming, help, as he's being squeezed by a mob inside a vestibule of the Capitol, and he cannot breathe, and he's about to pass out. He wants to pardon people for that. You got to show them the video, Abe, and you got to talk about it. I'm sorry.
I think Abe is making a good. I think he's making.
You're making a good point, but you understand.
A good point about what America, like what voters.
What
might be
Americans
thinking about.
Americans care about.
And I do think that is true. That there's a lot of voters that aren't going to be moved one way or another, specifically about talk around January 6th. And I even think, unfortunately, talks about like threat to democracy. One of the things that was exciting to me about Biden stepping away and having Harris come to the top of the ticket was the end of a Democratic strategy that was largely about fear-mongering around democracy, which is it's true. It is true that this is an incredibly important election, is that to elect Donald Trump or to have Trump become president, let's not even like any way that he becomes president, is a serious, perhaps deadly blow to our democracy. That is not something that can necessarily get a lot of people out. In fact, it can be sort of like with climate change, such a daunting thought, it keeps you from taking action. I was so energized by Harris and WALZ because they were like, it's weird to want to get into women's like private stuff. That's weird. It is weird to want to keep parents from being able to take care of their kids in the way they want to take care of them. It is weird to scapegoat immigrants. It is weird to do that shit. And what I love about that, let me finish. And what I love about that turn is that I think you get to say that and have people be cognizant of the fact that that weird shit can also be fatal, right?
Yes.
And
what I love about weird, and I'll raise you one more word, which is why I love the campaign so much, is they replaced democracy with the word freedom.
Yeah.
Because democracy has become a concept. And freedom is what we know. Women have lost their rights. They want to put gay rights on the chopping block. So freedom became, and when Beyonce's song just happened to kind of fall in line, it was why she was able to galvanize and why we went on such an amazing tear into where we are now. I just hope we can keep it going.
That threats to freedom are much more intelligible than threats to democracy. And I think that's a lot of, again, as we're talking, I also am feeling better about WALZ's performance. And I do think WALZ communicated a lot of that like what this stuff is about your everyone watching here's freedoms.
I think that what concerns me, and I'm just going to be honest here because I'm very anti-Donald Trump. I don't want him to get anywhere near the White House again. Again, I'll reiterate what I said to start the show here. I'm not sure that this debate changes anybody's mind.
No.
Yeah.
You know, but that's what I'm worried about. You know, that's what bothers me a little bit, and that's what I'm worried about. Nothing against Tim Walz. I just wanted to be
Why are you worried about that?
Well, it never was going to change anybody. I mean,
I'll tell you why I'm worried. You know, on my show today, I had the former Nevada Republican chair, Amy Tarkanian, great lady. She used to be very pro Donald Trump. She's not ready to vote for Kamala Harris yet. There's a lot of moderate Republicans out there that have said to me, I'm not voting for Trump, but they're not ready to vote for Harris. And I asked them, what will change your mind where I know you're not voting for Trump, but what will change your mind where you'll vote for Harris? I want to see a good debate performance. I want to see this. I want to see that. I want to see. And I said, well, you didn't see that with Harris? I want to see what WALZ does. I've already gotten a lot of texts from people. Their minds have not been changed yet. And I'm not blaming and putting that all on Tim Walz. There's just a lot of moderate Republicans out there that are not ready to vote for Harris yet, and that's why I'm concerned.
Yeah.
The biggest concern is that the media is not giving. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'll take it. I don't think that was ever going to happen. I mean, that they may have told you that's what they want to happen. I just think statistically, like what we are seeing, it would have been unusual. That's what I should say. It would have been unusual in terms of what political scientists have seen over the years, in terms of how people react to debates, to have someone's mind be really changed by almost anyone. It would have been like a superhuman performance.
So, Anna, that's a good point. And what I do tell Democrats out there, I'm an independent like you, Don, but what I do tell Democrats is this. If a Republican, moderate or not, says they're not voting for Trump, you got to take that as a win. Even if they don't vote for Harris, that's still a win for Democrats.
Yes.
Doesn't mean I'm not still worried, but that is a win for Democrats. And as we know, a lot of people in Trump's cabinet are not supporting him. Some have already endorsed Harris already. So that is a win. So we can't expect everything.
But to your point, Brian, the people that still want to see more from Kamala, it's because the media have cock-blocked any coverage of her.
Sure.
It's like they talk about Trump all day long, his mistakes, his foibles, his lies, and then even if Kamala does something like at the border, it's like they'll cover it for a few minutes,
Right.
and that's the end of that. And then they're going to talk about what Trump thinks about her going to the border, and that's going to happen. And when she did that interview on MSNBC with Stephanie Ruhle, it was, it didn't become news anywhere else, really. Maybe it was covered for a minute. Other than that, if he did a speech, they run it live, then they're talking about it, and they're dissecting every lie he made. It's how can she get a fair shake if the media is really focused on just getting, Trump back in the White House?
Well, they're also
unfortunately.
they're covering his stuff, but they're doing is I don't like the term sane washing as a crazy person. I prefer sense washing.
I can't believe
perhaps.
you use that word, by the way.
But I know, sorry. Sense washing is one that I like. But anyway, but they do take his stuff and they launder it so that it doesn't sound as unhinged, right? And there is a world in which that purge speech that he gave the other day becomes front fucking page news.
Anna, I said that on my show today.
That should have been like big font, 10
years ago, 10 years ago, if somebody talked about endorsing a purge, it would have been on the front of every newspaper. It would have led on every show. Don, you probably would have led with that. There's no question if somebody endorsed a purge, but that's like par for the course now with Donald Trump. And I wish that they talked about that in the debate today in regards to the hurricane, Trump's arrival, taking photo ops, signing autographs, and lying about the communication with Joe Biden and Governor Kemp. They didn't really talk about that, and I think.
But don't you think, Brian, that it was incumbent upon Tim Walz to get that across? Because I would have snuck all that in there. I would have.
Don, that's very fair. Don, that's very fair criticism. I was thinking that out loud during the debate. I just think there's so many opportunities. I like Tim Walz. Let me reiterate that. Good guy. There were a lot of opportunities that were missed from Tim Walz today. I'm not saying that J.D. Vance won anything, but I think Tim Walz missed a bunch of opportunities tonight, and I just think we have to be fair about it, and that's my opinion. I think he missed a lot of chances to really go after J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, and in many situations, I felt like, I'm not going to say he failed, but I think he missed some opportunities.
Yeah, I would have started off by saying, look, I would much, and rather than standing on this stage debating with someone who I think doesn't deserve the time or the attention of the American people, considering everything that he said over the last couple of months about women and about Americans and how insulting it is, I would much rather be down south helping out my fellow Americans who are in the storm-ravaged South. But I cannot go there now because the governors have respectfully asked us not to go, and they are going to tell us when it's appropriate to go, unlike your boss, who went down for a photo op.
Right.
So I would rather be down there with them, but I can't be. I have to be here with you. So while I'm here, I'm going to take you on, and I'm going to tell the truth, and I'm going to point out all the lies and misconceptions that you have been spreading, not only over the last couple of months since you have been picked as a vice presidential candidate, but over the last decades that you have said, especially considering all the sound bites that have come out from the numerous interviews that you have given.
Don, you should have given them. You should have given them debate prep.
I was going to say,
debate prep.
are you going to publish that?
Definitely,
fan fiction?
No, but I will tell you that I have
Are
been
you
in
gonna
many
put that-
debate preps and what we call the cone, which is a cone of silence where you go over debate prep. And you have people who stand there and they tell you exactly, you have people, someone will be J.D. Vance, someone will be Tim Walz, someone will be whatever, depending on the debate that you're on. And usually the person playing that role has studied the role, has studied all the interviews and what people have said in interviews and on the campaign trail and throughout their career as a politician. And usually it is exactly, that person says exactly what the person playing them will say exactly what the candidate will say on the debate stage. And so my first debate, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly as it was in debate prep, in the cone of silence. That this candidate said exactly what that person said because they had studied him so much. So you know what they're going to say. And so I don't understand how when they're in debate prep, they don't understand what the other person is going to say, and then they just sort of pivot off of it. I don't really get it. I don't think it's not that hard.
I agree. I think this is an important point to make. Let's keep in mind that there are people that lost loved ones. Over 100 people died. Okay, there are people that lost their homes. They don't know where.
And there are people, Brian, who are not able to watch this because they don't have power right now.
Great.
They're missing. They're missing. There's 100 and some people missing.
And what did Trump decide to do? He decided to lie to score political points and say Joe Biden was not communicating with the governor of Georgia. And I thought Tim Walz should have brought that up. And I thought Joe Biden made such a great point the other day when he said, you're making these people, the pain that they're facing, worse. And I wish he brought that up. He didn't, but what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I just think it's funny with the criticisms I've heard of y'all that y'all have made of Walz have been like, he could have done this better. He could have been stronger on this.
Yeah.
And our criticisms of Vance,
we're Monday morning quarterback.
and our criticisms of Vance have been that he's a lying sack of shit. Right?
That's
and
given.
I guess
That's given.
I guess I would rather get the criticisms that Tim Walz is getting, but it just seems like we're spending more time about Tim should have done this, Tim should have done that. And I just want to remind everyone.
Because he should have, though, Anna. He should have done it.
Because
That's why
we
we're
would
saying
have liked to see J.D. Vance get kicked in the shins.
Yeah, but here's the thing also.
The thing is, Kamala didn't choose Tim because that's the kind of person he is.
Yeah.
He softens the edges that a female person of color running for president,
Abe, I hear you.
There is this moment, though, when we're talking about performance, and there was a moment where I was shocked because Margaret Brennan muted J.D. Vance. Here it is. Here's a moment.
Oh, yeah, that was awesome.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
We
CBP
want to have-
app has not been on the books. It's something that Kamala Harris created.
Gentlemen,
That look.
the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora?
Thank you.
I love that moment because that's how it should have been in the Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris debate. It should have been that way. It should have in the Trump and Biden debate. It should have been that way. But it seems like in the Vice President Kamala Harris debate and the Donald Trump debate on ABC, every time Kamala Harris would finish, they would wrap her up and they'd say, okay, you're done. And then Donald Trump would start speaking. They would open his mic. And I'm like, wait, what the hell is going on here? Did you notice
The women ran this thing like clockwork.
I loved it.
Of course, because they were women.
And I'm surprised they didn't actually have to mute. I was expecting more fireworks where they'd have to mute them more often, but that was the only instance. Yeah. Can I throw out a big picture question? I'd love maybe a speed round here. I'd love to hear what you guys think.
Yes, sir. I told you he was going to be my co-host tonight. Go ahead.
Which is, the election is 5 weeks from tonight.
I know, right?
5 weeks from right now, we will either be, we'll have a pretty good idea. I have a sense, maybe. What does Kamala Harris need to do in the next 5 weeks to lock this thing down, to maximize her chances of winning? So I'll give my very quick answer, which is it is actually, the idea was triggered. There is a betting market on Polymarket right now. Will Kamala Harris go on Saturday Night Live in the next 5 weeks? And this is consistent with something when I was last on your show and the previous time I was here, I've been saying she's very likable, she's good on her feet, and the contrast with Trump and his ramblings, his incoherence, his anger, whatever. She should be getting out there as much as possible. So I've been calling on her to go on 60 Minutes, to be doing lots of interviews. And then it occurred to me,
60 Minutes,
and I've specifically written she should go on Colbert or Seth Meyers, the way Obama used to, right? So, so I think absolutely go on Saturday Night Live, be a guest on Saturday Night Live. So get out there and let the American people, see her unscripted, spontaneous, funny.
Do those things really work anymore? Because I actually think that she should just come on digital and she should be on the Don Lemon Show. But
that should be the first stop. Then Saturday Night Live.
Look, I got to tell you, the reason I say that, and you guys know this when we talk about it, I'm kind of half joking, but I'm half serious, because if you look at what just came out the other day, streaming claims largest piece of TV viewing pie, total TV and streaming snapshot from August of 2024, and the biggest pie is from streaming. YouTube with the biggest. Yeah. And so I would suggest that she does that, but I think going on Saturday Night Live, I'm of two minds. Number one, I think it humanizes her, and if you meet her in person, she's, just like Hillary Clinton. She's very personable, but then when you see them on TV, you're like, oh, not so much. Sometimes. I'm also of two minds, because it's also giving 2016 when Hillary Clinton went on. And it's like, so I don't know. You guys.
I just want to take it a step further. I agree with everything you said, Whitney, but I don't think 60 minutes is enough. A big mistake that I think Hillary Clinton made is she waited to do the Howard Stern show after the election. It humanized her, and I thought it was a wonderful interview, because we didn't hear of Hillary the robot. It was the human being, how she fell in love with Bill Clinton. Now, you guys might disagree with me on this. And I asked Quentin Fulks this question the other day on my show. Why not go on the opposition? Why not go on Fox News? I despise Fox News, but why not go on Fox News?
Go on the All In podcast. Go on Joe Rogan.
I agree with you. Those are the mistakes that Hillary Clinton made, part of the reason why she lost. I don't think she's going to do it, and I think it's a huge mistake. Go on some of the opposition.
Yeah.
She's a smart lady. Debate Sean Hannity.
No.
Tell me why.
Why do you say that, Anna?
You don't debate a Holocaust denier, right? Like, that is there's media theory about this. Like, you don't debate people who are vaccine deniers. That puts them on equal footing. You don't debate climate deniers. You're not going to, for number one, the people are not going to hear you. If you go on.
But Donald Trump is a climate denier, and she had to debate him.
Well, I would have said, I'm almost at the point that I don't think there should be debates with this kind of guy, because he's a climate denier, because he's a vaccine doubter. Honestly.
Yeah. Not everybody.
Someone just tweeted, you should go on Lex Fridman, Trump, to his credit.
No, they didn't tweet it. That was in our comments.
Okay, sorry.
That was in our comments. Sorry.
I'm just seeing the comments up there.
Don't platform. Don't share don't go as the person who is currently the sitting vice president of the United States. You don't need to raise Joe Rogan's platform, right? You don't need him. You really don't.
Look, he's got how many tens of millions of viewers?
He's got the biggest podcast on the planet. I respectfully disagree with you.
But do you think going on, you think it would change minds?
I don't think it would change. That's the other thing, is I don't think it would change minds. You ask, what should she do?
I don't know. Maybe it will. I'm serious. That is a legitimate question. I'm being honest and earnest about it. Do you think it would actually change minds?
What I think she should do is pour money into getting out voters. I think there should be also, I think it would be really cool to divert, for instance, campaign resources to doing some outreach for Hurricane Helene relief. That is something that the Beto O'Rourke organization did during the 2018 campaign for Senate here. Is they sent water bottles, and they used campaign call centers to help try and connect people to loved ones. I think that could be very, very powerful, symbolically and just individually. And again, I think it's going to be all about voter turnout. I think we're talking about media landscape. Honestly, it's totally saturated. Yeah. There is not going to be a lot of minds that are changed because of things you see on TV. I think things like postcards to voters, I don't know if you've heard of that kind of thing, but individual person-to-person contacts, the more that you can facilitate low propensity voters getting contacted by a friend or a loved one to get them to go to the polls, that's really expensive, and it really, really works.
Yeah, that's
one thing that I will say is that, because I agree with you about platforming election deniers and all kinds of liars. The only thing is that she's having issues with men. And going on one of those brocasts or bro podcasts might actually You know, they may say she might actually change some minds. I don't know if it will. I don't believe in platforming those people, but she's not actually platforming them because it's their platform, and she's just
She's
going on there.
dignifying them.
Yeah, but I don't-
she's loaning them her dignity, and I don't think they deserve her dignity.
Well,
I agree with Whitney regarding, I think SNL with her and Maya Rudolph could be a fantastic skit.
It would be funny, and everybody would run the clips, and then
that would just.
But
now,
what
yes,
is enough, though, Abe? Because then they'd say, "Oh,
No,
she
that's
can
not
go
the
on
only thing.
Saturday Night Live, but she won't come on Fox." You know,
No,
they're, you know.
she-
So I don't know.
I actually think she should do three things. I think she should do SNL. I think she should do 60 Minutes, and I think she should find somebody on Fox that just shows that she's a fighter. She is a fighter. Her career has been before vice president as a fighter. And that's the senator we saw taking on the Supreme Court idiots. And that's who I personally feel I didn't see enough. I want to see whatever I can of that night, that day in the Supreme Court when she went toe to toe with Kavanaugh. And that is what I think guys want to see. That's the kind of energy she has. And I feel like her people are kind of protecting her a little too much. And
Yeah,
feel
I mean,
like
they're playing.
I
They're
agree.
playing
Missed
as if she's up
opportunity.
8 points in the
I
polls,
agree.
and I don't
Yes.
want to. I don't want to go into election day 5 weeks from now with this being a 50-50 jump ball. She should.
right.
And I have
She
to say
should be
we're-
winning by a lot here.
Y'all
I think
are
the
all
reason
just-
she's not.
She's
is
too
because
careful.
The
See,
American
Anna-
people don't feel like they know her as a person, and it's because she's almost always on a teleprompter, and she hasn't taken
Y'all
any
are
risk
all
in terms
doing-
of getting herself out there.
Y'all are all
Okay,
doing
we're
media
pissing off the
criticism.
woman.
What'd you say?
You're
Anna?
doing media criticism and not like campaign strategy, right? Like the media game is baked. It is like, I mean, yes, there are these big play things she could do that she's not going to do. Like in the realm of possibility, like I'd love for her to go on your podcast. I'd love for her to come on my podcast. I'd love to see her on, as I've said, Hot Ones. I think she would fucking rock it. Like, but I don't think she's going to do those things.
Why not?
But hold on.
I just don't think she's just not going to
Okay,
do those.
right,
It's just
but I
like,
think-
I think
Anna-
that's a
not
big
going to do
mistake.
Anna,
it.
let me
Don't
say
you
this,
agree?
guys. If you'll just give me the
I don't-
floor, just give me
Okay, you're the
a
host.
minute or
Okay.
two here. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I went through 2016, and I predicted that Donald Trump would win 2016, and let me tell you why. For the reasons that Whitney's saying, for the reasons that Brian is saying, for the reason that Abe is saying, and for the reason that I'm saying. Not for you, and you, Anna, so don't get mad at me. Hillary Clinton was too picky and too careful about what she did. Donald Trump flooded the zone. And I realized it one Sunday when I opened the New York Times. Donald Trump was on the front page. He was of the newspaper. He was on the front page of the business section. He was on the front page of the real estate section. He was on the front page of the opinion section. He was on the front page of the metropolitan section. And then I turn on the Sunday shows, and they're talking about Donald Trump. And then I turn on a football game, and he's at a college football game somewhere or a national football game somewhere. And then I turn it on Fox News, and he's giving an interview with Fox News on their morning show, sitting wherever he is on a phoner. And then I turn it on Morning Joe, and he's on Morning Joe, sitting wherever he is in his apartment or wherever he is. And then you turn it on CNN, and he's sitting wherever he is, and he's phoning it in. And Hillary Clinton's campaign is saying to the folks in the media, why do we need to do that when your opponent is doing the work for you and destroying himself?
Right.
And none of that was true.
Right.
There is nothing that Kamala Harris can do that's worse than 34 criminal counts. That's worse than they're eating the dogs and eating the cats. That's worse than the whole narrative about a couch, whether it's real or not. That's worse than childless cat ladies and people who don't have children should pay more taxes. That's nothing that they can do. They are being way too careful. The best moment of this campaign for Kamala Harris, besides that debate and the speech that she gave, her acceptance speech at the convention, was, if you come into my house, you're going to get shot. and that was off the cuff, and that is what Americans want from her, not her giving a white paper response to her policies, because they don't care about that. They want to get to know her. Trust me, that's not just media analysis. That is the Don Lemon who goes across the country and who talks to people every single day. They want to know her, and they want the real her, and not like some bottled standing in front of a teleprompter.
She
When
gave that
she
to
wa-
Stephanie Rule, and no one covered it. That, like we were just talking
Exactly.
That's
See,
not true.
I think that no
That's
one.
not
We
true.
just agreed. No one covered it. I think that
No one covered it?
Yeah.
we just
Very few people.
very few people covered it.
It wasn't a top story.
It
wasn't
wasn't.
even a top story on the other hours of MSNBC afterward. It was
Yeah.
not even. It was a little segment. But I have
Yeah.
to say, yeah.
After that interview,
she-
let me ask you that. Whose fault is that? I'm just saying, I'm just
That's
giving
the
you analysis.
media's fault.
Listen. No, listen. So you go on Stephanie Rule, right? And then the next morning, you're on Morning Joe. And then when you hang up with Morning Joe, you're calling into Fox and Friends.
I don't
And when
think-
you
I
hang
don't-
up with Fox and Friends, you're calling into CNN. And when you hang up with CNN, you're going on the Today Show. And when you're up
You're
from
gonna
the
be-
Today
I-
Show,
as a-
you're on with Robin Roberts. And when you're done with Robin Roberts, you're on
Right.
with Gayle King.
Right.
And then when you're done with them, you're on with whoever's on the Today
Yeah,
Show,
you're calling into
Savannah and whatever,
podcasts.
and you're flooding the zone, and you're saying, "I'm out here. I'm trying to win you over. I want the
Right.
American
And if-
people
and
to
if
get
she
to know
did
who I
that,
am,
then
and
people
I'm
like
not going
you-
on Stephanie
if
Rule."
she
Right.
did
And I
that,
love Stephanie Rule.
media critics and other critics in the media would be like, "Why isn't she out there talking to voters?"
And then after that, I would go out and talk to
That
voters.
is the way you talk to voters in
not.
today's
But that's
world.
how you talk to
That is
voters.
not the way you talk to voters.
I
Why
have
don't you
to
just
throw-
talk about streaming being the hugest piece of the pie. That is,
Can I just
voters
add
are not
something?
on TV anymore.
I
I mean, and I just
All right.
feel like
In 2019, when she was running for president, she went out to a farm wearing a pair of jeans, work boots, and a t-shirt and a work shirt. And there's a photo of her with the farmer, and I remembered it from 2019. And she has not. And it was the problem with Hillary. She never got out of that damn pantsuit. That pantsuit nation
true.
ended up not
It's
delivering. I'm sorry. She didn't go to Michigan. She needed to go to the heartland. That's why we lost the blue
sure,
wall.
go there. Don't do TV.
But she should go to the farm, and even if it's black farmers, the point is the farmers are the people that she's having a problem with.
This is my.
White men
Sure.
in
Yes,
the middle of the
I agree
country.
with that.
I agree with everything, Don. That
But that's all local. That's all local
Yes.
press, which is
Yes,
great.
do local press.
I
Yes,
just want to add
totally.
one thing. Whoever
And
wins this
SNL.
whoever wins this election is going to be from the moderates, moderate Republicans, independents, moderate Democrats. You're not going to win them over by going on MSNBC or doing a pre-recorded interview like that. You're going to win those people over by going on the Howard Stern show. You're going to win those people over by doing what Don Lemon just said. These are the same mistakes, that Hillary made back in the day when what Don was just referring to. I understand what you're saying, Anna. You don't owe Sean Hannity anything. Pick somebody else on Fox News. I don't know, Neil Cavuto. Pick somebody on there that maybe isn't a Holocaust denier, right? I'm not saying go on the Laura Ingraham show, but what I am saying is go on some shows where maybe they're not so pro-friendly. Now, you and I would love it if she came on our shows. We'll ask her tough questions, but we're still Kamala Harris supporters. Doesn't mean we're not going to ask, tough questions. You got to go on the opposition at some point. And I'm worried that if she doesn't do that in the next 5 weeks, she's not going to win over those moderates or moderate.
And you have to remember, yes, the rules are different for her than Donald Trump because Donald Trump can say anything. But think about
And
it.
she's a
Think
woman.
about the news cycle, Anna. If someone makes a mistake and then all they have to do is keep going because people forget about it. If you make a mistake and let's just say that she gets criticized for something, all she has to do is say, you know what? I messed up on that one, and then keep going, and then go to the next one, and go to the next one.
I don't
she
think the
has to get
rules-
people to know her.
I don't
I mean, the
think
fact
that the
that
rules
Joe
work
went-
the same for a black woman as they do for a rich white guy who, we know the rules aren't the same.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
we or else he would not be the guy who's running for president. I mean, he is a convicted felon. He is, he is a rapist. He is all those things, and he still gets covered the way that you're talking, right? And that's the thing when you say, but when you talked about him being on the cover of, you know, all those different sections and doing all those shows, we knew what a terrible person he was. We in the media did actually know that, and we kept platforming him. That's what I kept thinking about when you were going down that list. I wasn't thinking, and so that's what Kamala Harris should do. What I kept on thinking was how it breaks my heart that so many of us, and I was complicit in this too, platformed a man who was lying all the time, right? And just kept showing him. Is the solution to continuing to make Donald Trump ever present in our lives is to try and make Kamala Harris compete with that? Or is it to like do something entirely different? I think the solution
I don't
might
think.
be
Yes,
to
she
do
has to
something
compete with
entirely
that, Anna. She's running for president.
Yeah.
She has to compete with it. It's not anything that we're doing. And listen, trust me, I know about the rules being different for people of color.
Yeah.
But the universe somehow, and whatever it is you want to think, has thrust Kamala Harris into this position in an unusual way with a truncated timeline. And in a truncated timeline, you cannot sit back on your laurels and go by the traditional, well, we have to do it this way. And she cannot listen to the people around her who used to say, you know, just be safe. And because those people, you know, where's Robbie Mook right now, who ran Hillary Clinton's campaign, right? And some of the people who run those campaigns and those people don't get elected, they go on, they become contributors on networks, and then you're still sitting at home and you're not president of the United States. She's got to go with her guts, and she's got to take a chance, and she's got to get out there and say, I may not say everything perfectly. If you want to know my plan, then you go and I've got this, and here's what I'm going to tell you. If you want to know what I'm going to do at the border, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the plan in place that James Lankford, I'm going to reintroduce it to the Congress, and I'm going to put the plan in place that Jim Lankford put in place that was killed at the behest of Donald Trump, that would have fixed the border or would have made it better. That's what I'm going to do. And then we'll continue to monitor the situation until it's time to readjust and change, and that's what we're going to do. Next question. What are you going to do about the economy and high prices? Well, it is obvious right now that what the Biden-Harris approach is working. Otherwise, the feds would not have lowered the interest rates if inflation was not coming down. So we're going to continue on with the great plan from the Biden-Harris administration that is working, and we're going to monitor that and change it if need be. That's what we're going to do. Next question. Yeah. What are you going to do about abortion? Yeah. We're going to codify abortion across this country. I'm going to make sure that it's introduced into the Congress and the Senate, and I will sign that legislation when it reaches my desk. What else do you want to know? And that's what she needs to do. Instead of being afraid and talking about, not even concepts of a plan. She's not doing that. She does have a plan, but just sort of giving feelings and I like her. I know her. I've met her many times. She's a very personable person. She has to stop being careful and listening to the political people around her and the advisors, and she has to go with her gut. She is a black woman. I am a black woman. The rules are different for me. I understand that. But I got into this race with very little time. I was thrust into this race. I was being a good soldier as the Vice President of the United States and doing the job that I'm supposed to do as Vice President of the United States, and that is to be the right hand to the President who actually makes the decisions in this country. And so while I am part of a Biden-Harris administration, Joe is the guy. But when I'm the guy, I may not do exactly what Joe Biden has done. I'm not going to handle myself the way Joe Biden has handled himself, because Joe Biden is Joe Biden and I am Kamala Harris. And I'm asking you to give me a chance, like you gave other people a chance, and to understand that I'm looking out for you and only you, the American people. That is what I'm all about. Give me a chance and I will prove it to you. That's what she has to do.
I would vote for you, okay? So I just want to
Sorry, I had to say that because it's so frustrating.
Yeah. I guess we know who's going to play Kamala in the biopic.
Well, I can. Did you see my Halloween costume last year?
Yeah, that's good.
I
That's
went
good.
as Kamala Harris.
I think you got it. I again.
Sorry,
yes,
go on.
I totally
Go ahead.
vote for you.
You know, I read a quote from someone in the paper as sort of an undecided voter who said, you know what, I think I'm going to vote for Trump because the devil I know is better than the devil I don't.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I don't think the American people feel like they know her. And it's she just needs to get out there. It should not be a newsworthy event that she does an interview with Stephanie Ruhle, and then 2 days later or 2 days beforehand she was on Oprah. Like she should be doing, like you said, she should be doing that 5 times a day.
Yeah.
Just out there, unscripted, spontaneous, funny, engaging, personable. That's you know, and it's not too late.
Is there anybody here that thinks that she can't do what Gavin Newsom did and going on Fox News? I think she's more than capable of doing that. I think you're being way too careful. Let me ask you a question, Anna, if that's
Or
okay.
Pete Buttigieg. Hey, just real quick before you get in, can we take this camera, the single camera, right here? This is me last year as Kamala Harris. Sorry, it's a little out of focus.
I have to
but
text
that's
that
what
to
I
me.
went as Kamala Harris, and
You're
my
great.
then fiance, now husband, went as Joe Biden, and we won all the contests. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Okay, I just wanted to say, you know, I don't think it's that we were giving Donald Trump a platform. He's the front runner of the Republican Party, and it's either going to be him or Kamala Harris that's going to be the president. But Anna, I want to ask you a question. What are the negatives? Like if she did an interview, let's just say Howard Stern. What do you think are the negatives of her doing an interview like that? Because quite frankly, for me, I can't think of one.
I mean, I want, as a person, I would love her to do that interview, right? As someone who has done a lot of interviews with politicians over the past few years, I cannot think of something I would want less than to hear a politician interviewed 1,000 times, unless they're an unhinged person like Trump, who is not tethered to the truth about himself or about his policies. Every interview with Trump turns into something kind of magical, right? Because he just says whatever comes to his mind. I mean, he's gotten older. He has his like things that he keeps coming back to. But it is true that you sit down with Donald Trump, you don't know what he's going to say.
Right.
Because we live in the world we live in, Kamala Harris is going to give essentially the same interview every time she talks to somebody, right? Now, do I wish she wouldn't? Yes.
Good point.
But
The other
in
thing
this, if we're doing a fan fiction here, which it is basically, I mean, Don's doing an amazing job. Like that is.
Yeah, that's
It's not even. It's so good.
But can I ask you something?
But
Anna?
in the fan fiction version of this, she sits down and has real conversations. I was on the job. You know, I wrote the Straight Talk Express myself. I covered McCain, and it was amazing. It was so fun. He was so personable, and his stories were amazing. And he cursed, and like it was just such catnip for everybody. And I would love her to do something like that. I mean,
remember when Hillary was in New Hampshire,
and she
drove
cried.
down. I don't see Kamala even doing those kind of things. I see her getting on a plane, a quick soundbite. Oh, is he going to meet me for another debate? I mean, we need.
But Abe, look, Anna's right, and I understand as a person
I
of
agree with
color.
Anna. I agree with everybody.
But I understand as a person of color, the rules are different for her. She can't be the angry black woman, right? She can't be too aggressive. Like, it's all those things. But you know what? I think because of the time that we're in and this sort of truncated timeline, I actually think that she can be those things. I think it gives her license to be those things. And you have to admit, Anna, she has a lot of catching up to do. I mean, what was it, 6 weeks ago when she got into this race? Or however long it was. It wasn't that long ago, maybe 8 weeks. However, it was, it was in August that she got into this race? Or
The debate was June 27th, and it was a month after that.
yeah, so a month after July or whatever.
August,
That
September,
she got
so it's
into
2
this
months ago.
race. So she's got a lot of catching up to do for interviews and to introduce herself. And I think that isn't unfair to ask of the American people. Like, they want to know her, right? We're the, us, the chattering class. Okay, we know.
Listen,
People are like trying to, right now they're like, Don Lemon's on streaming, I go to bed or whatever. They're watching Rachel Maddow, and they're like, I gotta go to bed, I can't do this. And so they're not actually paying attention that much because they got to get their kids up in the morning to go to preschool.
So what
Can I
I'm
just
going to
say
do is go
something
back
that-
Let Anna finish her thought because I
The
cut her
thing
off.
that I'm going to go back to, if we're like wish casting about what we think she should do, is I'm going to go back to voter outreach. I honestly think that we were talking about undecided voters or moderates. I actually don't think this is going to be necessarily decided by moderates or undecided voters, which again, I don't think undecided voters still exist.
Same.
I think that it's going to be a lot about getting people out, because right now, I mean, there is no such thing as a true red state in America. Like if you go by policy, if everyone who could vote in Texas did vote, we would be a blue state, right? It's just the barriers to voting are so bad, and people can't vote for various reasons, including like, there are lines at the polls, there are polling places that have been shut down, et cetera, et cetera. I think the higher turnout election Kamala Harris can generate, the more likely she is to win, especially in swing states. Right. So that is where I would put my money if I were her. Like, yeah, sure, go on SNL. Yes.
I think both can be true.
Yeah, both can be true.
I think both can be true.
Right.
I want to say something that hasn't been mentioned and hasn't actually been mentioned in her campaign, which is I've been listening to these, these groups where they're getting opinions post-debate, that she's not really speaking to guaranteed voters, which are like 60 plus. She's not talking about how Trump wants to take away Medicare and, Social Security is on the chopping block, and those people vote.
Yeah.
And they're not being spoken to at all in this campaign. And I've heard people say it time and time again, people who don't want to vote for Trump and don't know if they feel like she's really got them in what her plan is. I think that's really important, and that is something that has not been mentioned whatsoever. Yeah. So that's why people going to older people where like those diners where you see people she doesn't do that stuff where America is. And I think there's time to do 5 or 6 or 8 of these opportunities that feel organic and not
Okay, but before we go,
but not 5 to 6 to 8 in 5 weeks, 5 to 6 to 8 a day.
A day. Yeah, you got to get out there. Anna's like,
I'll
are
settle
you guys
for 8.
kidding me?
Oh no, I'm very pro local market, go to diners and stuff.
Oh yeah.
It's the go on Rogan that I'm like or go on Fox.
Well, you know why I said that, Anna? It's only because she's having issues with men. That was my question.
Yeah. Men are not watching The View. They're not watching the Stephanie Rule interview, but they will listen to Lex Friedman, Joe Rogan.
And they're watching CNBC.
And the All In podcast.
They should put Tim Walz as the guest celebrity picker on College Game Day. That's what I think.
Did Tim Walz, do you guys think Tim Walz won over any bro dudes tonight? Any guys, any dudes?
Didn't lose them. That's all I had not to do.
Okay, so listen, let's get back to the debate, because one of my producers said, you guys stop bullying Anna. Anna, we're not bullying you, are we?
I know people, I just felt a little bit like I was having to make my case in a very deliberate way. But I think I felt heard. And I hope you also understand, I know that you know what it's like to be held to a different standard. And also,
absolutely.
Everyone here is familiar with those things, and I know you personally do. And it's also the fact of being a woman. You get it. I know
being a woman. I know when everyone in the meeting says something, the guy, and then at the end, a woman gives a great idea. I've been in many times, and the guy goes like that, and they're like, "Oh yeah, let's do that."
Let me give you an example. Donald Trump, as idiotic as it was, had the guts to show up at the National Association of Black Journalists, knowing that was the most hostile audience on the planet, and Kamala Harris won't show up on Colbert and Don Lemon.
I disagree that Trump knew that was a hostile audience. I think that
he may really be that dumb, but you know what? I hate the guy, but I respect him for going and being willing to go in front of that audience, and I don't see her showing any kind of courage and being willing to go into anything even 1/10 as hostile as that.
Okay, let me ask you guys this. I know it's not a basketball game or a football game. Abe, who won?
Tim Walz.
Who won, Anna?
Coach Walz, sure.
Who won, Brian?
I don't think anybody won. I thought it was a draw. I don't think this changed anybody's vote, in my personal opinion.
Whitney?
I word for word agree with Brian.
All right.
Can I just say?
I don't think it changed anything. I think performance-wise, being slick, it was J.D. Vance. I think sort of being a real vulnerable American, I think it was Tim Walz. So I think it's kind of a draw. I wish that Tim Walz had gotten in there a lot more.
Yeah.
But, you know, besides that, what are you going to do?
I just want to say, Anna, I was raised by women, and I thought that the women tonight were amazing. I think Kamala is going to be a great president. So no matter what we sounded like bully-wise, it's all about women.
We're not. We know that she's a strong panelist, and she can get us crazy, stupid dudes into shape, whip us into shape.
It was really fun. I was a good time. I liked it.
I love this. This is great. And you know, we
really
love you.
enjoyed it.
You were on what? Were you on yesterday?
I was on
the
yesterday.
program? Yeah, I love having you on. You know,
Can I just add one more quick thing? Anna, there is nobody that wants Kamala Harris to win more than me and there's nobody that dislikes Trump more than me. Well, maybe Melania Trump, but that might be the only other person. But just
His kids.
But
Right.
I'm on your side, Anna. I want her to win. You know, maybe we disagree a little bit with how she gets there, but let's just hope we get the result that we want in November.
well, I got a busy day tomorrow. I know you guys do too as well. I've been up since really early this morning, since like 10 a.m. Kidding. I've been up really early. So, Abe, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us. Anna, thank you for coming back. Abe, thank you for coming back. Anna, thank you for coming back. Brian, thank you for appearing for the very first time on the program. I hope that you'll come back more. We need to collab more, Brian. We need to figure out what we're going to do. Whitney, thank you for being my co-pilot here.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
you coming
Anytime.
back. So thank you for watching the Don Lemon Show, our post-debate coverage. Remember, tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., we're going to do our Hot Topics program. We're going to talk about this debate, and we'll talk about some other lighter things that you need to laugh about. Also, you guys, Diddy has 125 apparently, or 100 and some more charges allegedly coming out, and 25 of them are allegedly minors. So we've got that story to talk about. And also we're dealing with our folks down south who still don't have power, probably did not get to see the debate, and how that's going to affect the election. Because as you know, Asheville, North Carolina is a big Democratic stronghold.
Right.
And there's not a lot of power there. And then also big rural areas that are Republican strongholds. No power. How they're going to get to the voting booths? Is it going to be back up in time for people to early vote? All these things that we need to discuss beyond just a debate and whether there's a food fight on stage or whether this person called out that person, you know, in the timeline or the mics got cut. We have important things that we have to discuss, and we'll do it tomorrow at 10, and then we'll do it tomorrow at 5 o'clock for Live at 5. Maybe some of these folks will be back, and we'll be watching Brian's show or listening to Brian's show as well on the radio. Brian, where do we find you?
YouTube is the best place. Subscribe at PTL Radio Show. I got Joe Walsh coming on the show tomorrow. Some big guests. Bernie Sanders is coming on Friday. So some good guests lined up. And at PTL Radio Show on X, on YouTube, and on TikTok, and of course the FM AM dial as well here in Las Vegas.
And Abe, where do we find you? We see your book behind you.
Abe won't be silent at substack.com, won'tbesilent.com, and TikTok won't be silent.
Whitney?
Which is...
I'm in the investment newsletter business at stansberryresearch.com.
And of course, Anna, where do we find you? You have your own show.
I have a podcast, 90 Days with Ana Marie Cox. We've been counting down to the election, and yes, it is less than 1,000 hours, like 33 days.
And thank you guys for watching the Don
Can I
Lemon
just
Show.
Can I just say one last thing?
Yeah, before I tell people to hit the likes before they get out of here.
On October 17th on Max, my documentary, it's called Louder, the Soundtrack of Change, and it's about the women's voices through music, and the fact that all of a sudden, we did this starting in 22, that Kamala is running for president. It's like we've created this amazing opportunity to speak up for women.
All right. We can't wait for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for watching. Hit the thumbs up, the likes. Make sure you subscribe. We had 250,000 subscribers yesterday within just a couple of months that we've been on the air. So we're very proud about that. And also, you know, make sure you get my book, I Once Was Lost, My Search for God in America. It's out there. You can get it at your local bookstore or you can order it online. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate it. I'll see you tomorrow morning live at 10 a.m. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Hello.
Thank you.